All right, guys, I think we are live now for a special edition of Conversations with Cougars. If you don't recognize this gentleman, the last time you might have seen him, he didn't have quite the gray beard and maybe a little more on top, but it's the same guy you've always known, Dewey Bland. Good evening, Dewey. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Yes, thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
It is exciting. It's probably more exciting for me than it is for you, but there's going to be a whole bunch of folks who are going to come in tonight who you may or may not have been in contact with over the years. But for those of you who don't know Dewey or didn't know of him back in the day, Dewey was one of my protectors, and I sure appreciated him being on my side of the line. Dewey was an offensive lineman 1 year behind me. He was on our state championship team, and he helped keep me safe. And I know if Mom is watching tonight, she'll be very appreciative of all the work that you did back in the day.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I enjoyed being a protector. Yeah,
absolutely, and we're going to get into all that in a few minutes. But Dewey, it's been a few minutes since we last talked. So tell the folks what you're doing these days. I know you're stationed and you live with your beautiful family in the Philippines, but tell people what you're doing now.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the family first. It's I've not been very good at keeping up with high school classmates and friends. And so it is exciting for me to be able to talk to y'all. But 35 years ago was the state championship year. And so since then, been a lot going on. First off, I have a beautiful wife named Ellen, and we just celebrated 25 years together last month. And awesome. So that's been a huge piece of the last 35 years, and we've lived on both sides of the Pacific, she and I together, and so we have three great kids. We have a son, Emmanuel, who is out in Texas with his wife and our two grandbabies, and then we have two 17-year-old daughters, Chin and Karis, who are still in the house, and they are going to be they're seniors now. Their last year will be next year in the Philippines.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I posted a picture or two in the preceding the promo, so you guys can see the pictures of Dewey and his family, and I think the grandkids may be in the pictures. I can't remember.
Yes.
In there. But we've got folks. You were number 75. Well, number 74 has rolled in. Jackie Heidrich has rolled in. Josh Parrish, Keith Dudley. So thank you, guys. It's Pat Fitch. Thank you all for rolling in. There'll be many others in the upcoming minutes, Dewey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been, I've been thinking about all the linemen, Keith Dudley and Patrick Fitch, Manny Vargas, Kevin Collins, and Mark Smith, Chris Lee tomorrow night you have. Tommy Dixon, Keith Rice, and Andrew Warnberg, all of these guys, and I think about y'all often, and it's always nice to think about them, and so it's good to hear some of them are coming on.
Well, I know they're glad to be hearing from you as well. And Rue just signed on, LaRue Freeman. Hey, Rue.
Good to see you, Rue. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, Dewey, tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing. You're in the ministry in the Philippines, and I know that with the pandemic that's been going on the last few months, it's probably made your job even tougher. But tell us a little bit about your ministry and how you guys are coping or have coped before you came over to the States. I should have mentioned Dewey's in Alabama for this week or two, but we'll get to that in just a minute as well.
Yeah. My wife and I and our two girls have been living in the Philippines since 2012. So we've been there just over 8 years. We're working with an organization called Kids International Ministries. KidSIM.org is the actual website, kidsim.org. We do our ministry is right outside. It's right outside of Metro Manila. We are considered inside Metro Manila, but we're on the outskirts, if you will. 23 million people in the Philippines, in Manila itself.
Right.
And we work in an impoverished community in Cainta Rizal is the actual city and province. We got about 7,000 people that live in this squatters area. And our main ministries include a children's home with about 40 plus kids. Then we have a school from first grade to 10th grade with about 500 students in it. And then we also do an extensive feeding program, both in that squatters area and several other squatters area in the area itself. And so our ministry is holistic in its approach in this way. We believe that we need to be spiritually grounded. And so our particular religious belief is that we hope kids will and adults will have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And then secondly, that they will become educated. And because they're in an impoverished area, most of them are hungry. And so we try to do an extensive feeding program to make sure they have enough food, that they're not focused on their stomach and able to actually think and learn. And then the fourth piece of that prong, if you will, fourth prong in that wheel is protection. In impoverished communities, there is a tremendous amount of neglect and abuse that is taken out on the kids. So that's why we have our children's home, to try to rescue kids out of dangerous situations. And the hope is that through those four things, protection, nutrition, education, and spirituality, they will break the cycle of poverty and be able to get out of this cycle of poverty they're living in. So that's what we've been doing for a little over 8 years.
Well, I certainly applaud your efforts, and I wish you continued success, safety, harmony, and everything else. Hopefully the pandemic will subside after a while, and maybe you can get back to some normalcy. And we're going to come back to that in just a minute. But I want you to tell folks, you're in the States for a period of weeks now. What are you doing while you're in the States besides seeing family, or is that the focus?
Yeah. Well, we actually, the Philippines is still in community quarantines. We've been that way for the last 12 weeks. And so since we were basically going to be under house quarantine for the rest of the summer, we decided that we would come to the States, where actually it's much more open than it is in the Philippines. And so we came home, and predominantly to see family, to see my mom and sister here in Birmingham. And then 10 days or so, we'll drive out to Dallas, Texas, and see our son and his wife, Christine, and our 2 grandbabies out there. And so we will touch base with some of our financial supporters that have been helping us stay on the field and do what we've been doing for 8 years. And so we'll touch base with a group from Anianta. Let me give a call to them. Anianta, Alabama, big group up there. And then we'll go out and see them. We'll come back first part of August for about 10 days here back in Birmingham, and then we'll be flying back, and our girls will start their senior year, and we'll start our ministries again, depending on what's going on with the pandemic and everything in the Philippines at that time. So,
what was the reaction by your 2 daughters about leaving the Philippines and coming to the States for a couple of months?
Well, well, I'd be honest with you. One was excited about it. One was not as excited about it. There's been a lot of questions about what next school year is going to look like. Mm-hmm. So there was a great fear that, well, if we go, are we going to be able to get back in the Philippines? Because right now, the Philippines is closed to foreign visitors. So the reason we feel like we'll be able to get back in is because my wife is a Filipino citizen. So because Filipinos can get back in the country, and their dependents and their spouses, then we should be able to get back in. So the girls were okay with it. They're enjoying being home and relaxing, having some of the foods we don't have in the Philippines, and just enjoying family so far. So
well, good. Dewey, there's a whole bunch of folks here. I want to give you some shout outs. Coach Randy Hicks, Chris Parrish, Jennifer Jones Watson, Jackie Miller, and Cece have all joined in the last several minutes.
Hey, y'all, thanks for joining in. It's I've been talking to a few of y'all on Messenger and everything, so I'm Coach Hicks, and so it's great to hear some of the names and trying to remember faces with names, so that's cool. Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about faces and names, let's pivot for a few minutes. Let's take it back to middle school. Let's take it back to the mid 80s. Where did you go to middle school? When did you move to Dothan? Those kind of things.
Yeah. Dothan, I moved to Dothan, I want to say about grade 5. I don't know. I think it was Miss Coleman. It seems like, you hit me. I think it was Montana Street Elementary School. It seems like there was Then I was a Hornet. I went to Honeysuckle Middle School. Mm-hmm. So was there for 3 years and didn't start playing football until I was in 8th grade. And so only played, 8th grade was it. And then went to Northview after that. So I was a Honeysuckle Hornet. I think that was green and gold.
Well, who were some of your 8th grade teammates who later came over to Northview and were your teammates on the 9th grade team and beyond?
Oh, Bernard, you're going to get me in trouble with some of these people. I don't. Okay. I know Michael Dees was one, and he ended up playing 9th grade football, but then he went and decided to pursue golf and did a great job of that. I think he went on a golf scholarship to college after that. So who else? It probably Mark Smith, Tommy Dixon. Maybe I want to say they were at Honeysuckle with me. 8th grade was that was a long time ago. I mean, so. Yeah.
Do you remember, 2 questions along those lines. Do you remember playing against any of the guys at the other middle schools, Girard, Carver, Beverly, who later became teammates at Northview? Do you remember any of those competitions, any of those games?
Specific players. I know that Girard and Honeysuckle just about, no, you know what? I take that back. Honeysuckle ended up having about a split between going to Northview and Dothan High. Right. Todd Thorpe, who I think is pastoring in Dothan, is still there. Todd Thorpe went to Dothan High, and so a lot of our teammates split, and so we ended up playing against each other some. Girard, I think, was a whole all Northview. I think everybody from Girard just about went to Northview.
It was.
And so I don't remember. Since I only started playing in 8th grade, I was so trying to learn the game and the fundamentals and the specifics that I was not able to say, okay, who am I going to be playing next week? It was just like, man, just let me get through the day, so.
When did you first go over to the Northview campus and realize that was going to be your school?
Yeah. Well, my sister Carol was 4 years older than I was. Mm-hmm. So she was there at Northview during the first state championship team. Right. So I was on the campus several times with her, and so it wasn't brand new to me. But when we started, I guess, summer practices with Coach Cleveland, I saw your conversation with him last week. It's amazing hearing him say, you asked him about how old were you? I cannot imagine that he was in his mid-20s as a coach then, because to me, I mean, he was a giant. He was just huge, and he had this very boisterous, personality. And so it's neat. But I guess that it had to have been that early football as a 9th grader, maybe, when we came in, and that you began kind of, realizing, hey, I'm going to be around for a while. This is going to be where I'm at. So, probably 9th grade, early football practice. Yeah.
Was there any doubt in your mind you were going to be playing football for Northview when you came over?
I wasn't arrogant, but I felt like I had a grasp of the game by then, as best you can after a year or so. And I love the weights. We didn't do any working out with weights in middle school, I remember, but in high school we hit the weight room, and I loved doing squats and doing leg stuff. And so you know, I just hoped that I could. I hoped I could play, and so you know, we got through ninth grade. Didn't have as good a team, it sounded like, as your ninth grade team.
Well,
But
we had a decent team that year, but I'll tell you, from my perspective, whenever I saw the O line working out, that gave me a good feeling.
yeah,
Because the stronger you were. Got some more folks rolling in, Dewey. Jenny Parrish, Skog, Shirley C, Jason Mullins, Gray Harrison, Tracy Donnell. Got a whole bunch of folks sharing some love. All kind of comments. Parrish, I'll get back to that question for Dewey in just a minute. But oh man, that's going to be a story. But let's stick with the North time period. Dewey, ninth grade, adjusting for anybody, athlete or just a regular student, didn't matter what it was you were doing. That's a big transition coming from a middle school, and especially to the size from the physical dimensions of our campus as a ninth grader. It's a little bit of an adjustment academically, athletically. Did it ever become overwhelming during ninth grade? I know I certainly was as part of ninth grade.
Yeah. You know, probably from the physical aspect of just how physical Coach Cleveland was with us. I mean, just trying to get us in shape and get our minds wrapped around fundamentals. And down in the Dust Bowl, we talked about, you know, last week or a couple of weeks ago when you were talking to him. So probably that. I mean, I'm sure I was late for a few classes because of the size of the campus and everything. But it was you know, I really enjoyed going into high school. I think it was freeing. Of course, I was scared to death of the, you know, 10th and 11th and 12th grade players, especially. They were really giants. And so I guess football probably helped me have a place to fit in. And so I didn't feel like I was on the outskirts, but instead, I automatically had a group of guys that, you know, I can only imagine in middle school, we probably had 30 or 40 guys on the team. And then all of a sudden, you know, ninth grade, you got 50 probably, and then up the hill, then you got another 100 guys up there. And so I guess being a part of a group kind of helped me make that transition. And I don't have any real negative things from ninth grade that were like, you know what, just scared me to death, other than the bigger football players and Coach Cleveland. So
I told Coach Cleveland, part of it was on the discussion, and part of it, we had a long conversation after. The two things, other than the games, of course, you remember some of the games, but the two things that will always be forever etched right here is rolling whenever you got in trouble.
Absolutely.
The worst thing ever. And then running the side of the Dust Bowl, the hill.
The crisscross, up and down, up and down. Oh.
And there's a couple of decades of former Cougars who probably had that same nightmare as part of their high school experience.
Here's what I remember is when Coach Cleveland took that baseball cap and flipped it around to the back, you knew it was over. There was problems. There was trouble coming. You know, it was. And I remember that. So.
You would get down like in an umpire's or a tall catcher with hands on knees, and he was getting in there and getting all excited. And that part of that was some of the enthusiasm that all spilled out. But you're right, those coaches, I think Coach Parrish was maybe 34, 35, maybe even younger than that. Coach Hicks.
No way. Do you think he was that young?
Coach Hicks, how old were you in the mid 80s? I know you don't want to tell your age, but I promise you, I don't think any of those coaches were even close to 40. I think they were in their young.
Oh, my land.
Really 30. Yeah. Well, Dewey, take us to the time period, the first time that you got to dress out, or that you remember dressing out for the varsity, and we're in the locker room, if you will, under the stadium. You're hearing the band and the students, because we were right underneath them, and then getting to run out. What memories come up from that time period?
You know, I'll be honest with you. As you know, my family this week were saying, "What are you thinking about? You're going to talk about?" And I said, "I'm not scripting anything because I want you to ask questions and things come to me." But what initially comes to me was in my 10th grade year, we would play JV And then we would also play varsity because I played probably about half the time my 10th grade year. I was on varsity. I would either play in the game, and even a few games I started. But a lot of times I was just so worn out by the week because we would practice and play a couple of games and then practice more and then show up for the game. But I remember going in there and just being excited with the guys, a little bit of anxiety of what's coming. We'd go out and we would do our warm-ups. And something that sticks in my mind a lot was Coach Collins would then, after he got us all warmed up, we'd come down in the edge of the end zone and we'd take a knee and we'd do the Lord's Prayer together. And I remember that. That's a piece that I always remember. I really didn't like warming up because, especially being a big old lineman, I was like, listen, just let me save all my energy. I don't need to be wearing out here, but I understood. So.
Well, we're in the deep South. It's August and September. That humidity is no joke. And just as a side note, when I went off to Vanderbilt, we'd be working out in the summertime. It was incredible to me how the guys from the north just had never dealt with humidity, and they could be in the most amazing shape, but that humidity was no joke. And I can only imagine how the big guys, the linemen, had to deal with it. Speaking of linemen who I outweighed my senior year, Chris Lee, number 63, has joined us, and he says to tell you hello.
Chris Lee, I tell you what, I'll be watching tomorrow night. I thoroughly love Chris Lee. We have not kept up, on my fault, but he was man. I tell you, I love playing against Chris Lee. Nobody else I would have rather played football next to. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You probably remember when he hurt his chest, his sternum, and in our senior year, and he had to sit out. It seems like 2 or 3 games or something. It just, man, I was just crushed. I was like, what, So, hey, Chris, it's good to know you're listening, and I'll be watching you tomorrow night too. So,
Coach Hicks confirmed. He said they were in their early 30s.
Oh my goodness,
crazy.
That's hard for me to believe. I mean, I'm 51 now, so to think that I was 10, 15 years older. I'm 10 or 15 years older now than they were then, because to me they were just. Yeah, they were giants. So, yeah.
Well, what was it like after you broke huddle for the first play and you got to knock heads with somebody besides a teammate in front of those big crowds at Rip Hughes, or if we were on the road? That had to have been a little bit of letting some relief, some stress out. Now you got to knock heads.
Yeah, the butterflies. I mean, you had to get out there, and the coaches have done such a good job of just, conditioning us to do the fundamentals when the play happened. And so, absolutely, when we broke huddle the first time and we were able to go out and hit, then it was like, oh, okay, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing now. And then they would throw something different, the defense at us, or we would talk or whatever. But no, yeah, I remember those first few snaps, and then the adrenaline, you got the adrenaline high, and then it was like you were looking forward to the next Friday night. So, yeah, I love football. I love the whole experience. So.
Now, speaking of one of your classmates and fellow lineman, Charles Bunton has just joined us. Hey, Charles, good to see you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, good to see you. Or I don't get to see you yet, but good to know you're listening. So
they're there watching, and some good comments rolling through. And when we're done, Dewey, you can get in there and comment back all that you want. Unfortunately, can't do it while we're doing the live. What memories stick out from your 11th or 12th grade or 10th grade? Any of those years on and off the field? I know to me, you always had that killer instinct for the position that you played. But when we were off the field in the locker room or doing non-football stuff, your personality just came out. You kind of flipped that switch off. And it was the Dewey that I always enjoyed communicating with and cutting up with a little bit. But boy, when we stepped in between the lines, it was no joke at that point.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that in your personality? Did you ever realize that?
I probably didn't realize it at the time, but I see myself now in different roles when I believe it or not, when I step into the pulpit, I'm so dedicated to what my belief is that I have a different persona. People say, man, you're a great teacher. And it's like, thanks, I appreciate that. But I only like to teach the Bible. I've tried to teach some other things and it's like, I just don't have a heart for it. So I think maybe some of that was seen on the football field, that once I learned it, I don't ever think I was a good player, but I think I got to a point where I understood what I needed to do. Didn't always get it done, but I wanted to do my best as I could, and so, and then I know I was different off the field. I mean, I was definitely, they were cutting up and fooling around and stuff like that. But man, on the field, the coaches were so hard, or either I was trying to catch my breath so much that it was all business on the field. So, yeah, one memory I have, though, that came to me this week, I'll tell you about.
Please do.
We were playing, it was the championship year, and I believe it was when we were playing Fairhope down right outside of Mobile, or right across the bay from Mobile. Hot, man, it was hot. And we got on the bus and I told Coach Collins, I said, Coach, man, my stomach is upset. He said, yesterday it was upset a little bit. And my stomach, so he just put his hand on my shoulder. He said, you'll be okay. You'll be okay when we get there. So I'm like, okay, he's telling me I'm gonna be okay. We get out on the field, we start warming up, and it's one of those hot days. It must have been in November then, but it was still just awful hot and humid. And so during warm-ups, I raised my hand and Coach comes over and I said, Coach, man, my stomach's just torn up. Coach, I don't know, it's torn up. And you remember one of our trainers named Rooster. That's what they called him. He said, he yelled out, he just smiled. He said, Rooster, bring me the kit. So Rooster comes running out there and he's got the big black box, tape box, and he opens it up. And I don't think there was anything in the box except a 16-ounce bottle of Pepto-Bismol. And the coach pulled it out and he smiled at me, took the top off, threw the top back into the cabinet. And he said, drink this. And right out there in the middle of warm-ups, I just downed that whole bottle of Pepto-Bismol. You know what? My stomach problem went away. We played the whole game, had no problems. But I just remember that. It was hilarious at the time. Hope it doesn't get you in any trouble, Coach Collins, at this point. But it was fun. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for taking it for the team. If you remember, we actually beat Foley for homecoming at the last seconds of the game, 2 straight years.
Okay.
My junior year, your sophomore year, we went 99 yards and beat him. Chris Holmes caught a pass with seconds to go. And
Nice.
then we turned the favor when we went down to Foley and beat them very late for their homecoming. And I'll never forget that we had Foley's number for those 2 straight years. And another one a year, number 31, I believe, was Rick Casaneve's number. He just joined us. Hey, Rick, good to see you, bud. So you're bringing out all kind of guys from the 87 class. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dewey, you guys, the linemen, as they do on any good team, have real camaraderie. And I can name probably 11 of the 12 of y'all just off the top of my head. And I know from your class, in addition to Charles, was Mark Smith, Pat Fitch, Tommy Dixon, and that may be, is that everybody from your class? I think
from our class, Andrew Warnberg was a year younger. Keith Rice was a year older.
Right.
That's probably it from our class. Yeah.
And Chris Lee, of course, Kevin Collins, of course, both in my class.
Manny Vargas.
And Manny switched over to defense after a while, but you guys just always seem to be together, particularly the guys in your class, you and Tommy and Mark seem to be together quite a bit. And I was always very pleased that you guys were such good friends, because it always gave me, again, I knew that when the time came to it and I needed help, you guys could continue.
Yeah. Kevin Collins, we went out several times through the year. His dad invited the linemen out, and we would have dinners together and kick around the farm. I think they had a farm, or what we would call a farm back then. And, so that was fun. And then when we got into the playoffs, your father, Joel, stepped up, and it was like we were invited to the Naumburg house to have all the linemen. And it was like, whoa, just the linemen. And so we were like, okay, yeah, he's just trying to make sure that we keep protecting the boys. So, yeah, that was fun. We would have some good times doing that.
If make no mistake about it, they just didn't want their son hurt.
Oh, I know. I understood. Yeah. So.
Well, I also want to welcome Josh Andrews and Big E, Eric Hughley joined.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's nice.
Well, Dewey, let's take it to we're in the playoffs. It's your junior year, my senior year, and we had some really remarkable finishes and memorable games. Of course, the league game was the big comeback. Fairhope was the semifinal game that Lawrence really saved me, and then Clark kicks the field goal. And now we're set to play the team that just knocked off the number 2 team in the country, J.O. Johnson, out of the north part of the state in Huntsville. We're playing Huffman. Huffman has got Philip Doyle, who ended up starring at Alabama. Yeah. And they've got a whole bunch of very talented players. But we had already been through 5 overtimes.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it at all I was feeling any different than I did the other games. But there was just a little bit, and then I'm coming to a question, I promise.
Okay.
That week, if you remember, we came up to Birmingham to practice and see Legion Field on that Tuesday. And I remember the ride back home. Remember who I was sitting with. I remember the conversation. Some of these things, it's amazing what comes back. I just remember having just a little bit more confidence than I did the week before, and the week before, and the week before, because it just kept building.
Yeah.
Take us to what you recall about that week, about that game, or any of that time period that may have been a memory that you still have.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we first all walked out on Legion Field. A lot of us had been to ball games there. That's where Alabama was playing their home games at the time. And so, but to walk out on the AstroTurf and to the first time to play on carpet, and all of us were, we had socks on our arms and everything to keep the carpet burns down. And it wasn't it like the week before or a couple of weeks before, the Alabama had kicked the 52-yard. Who was that?
Van Tiffin kicked the 53-yarder to beat Auburn. That was that same week. It was the week prior.
That's right. And so,
3 days after that game, we're at Legion Field on that Tuesday practicing.
Yeah. And so everybody, it was like at some point we got all out there at that exact same place at the 53-yard line or 43 to make it, and then after it seemed like at some point the coach let a few of us try to kick that long one, and Clark probably made one, but it was just, and after that, when the aura of it kind of left, and it was like, okay, it's carpet and not grass. Let's get out here and do what we're supposed to do. And I agree with you. I think that may have been one of the only games that I kind of felt like we walked out and we were supposed to be there. It not arrogance, but simply, you know what, we've been trying all year, and we did have those 5 overtime games, and we lost, some games that year, but I felt like, you know what, we're supposed to be here. And I really remember that experience. And then for the game day, I remember a couple of plays that we did I think it was a 30 trap, and LaRue, I trapped and hit the guy and actually got him out of the way. And all I saw after that was, I think LaRue was number 30, right? And he was just hauling it down the field. And then another one, there was a sweep play that we did, and I actually got out, and there was no linebacker, so we got out in front, and so somebody was trailing me, and 30 yards down, I was able to just kind of get in front of somebody, and we scored. So there were a few of those that I remember as well. So
when you get a chance, the state game is on the Facebook group.
right,
Actually, several of the playoff games are as well from that same year.
I've seen a couple of them. Yeah.
I think you're going to like what you see from the state game from number 75.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take a look at it. It was fun. It was a great day. There were a lot of players from Huffman that I ended up going to school with at Alabama. In fact, I had some fraternity brothers that were from the same team, from Huffman. And so Joe Green so it was nice, playing those guys and then seeing them again. So
I didn't realize you and Joe were fraternity brothers. I've seen Joe over the years in Homewood. Our daughters played on the same softball team.
Nice.
Periodically, I've actually represented some of those guys in civil cases, work comp type cases. Lonnie Mathis says to tell you hello.
Yeah.
Beasley has joined us. And you may remember at the very beginning, first quarter of the game, Cece's cousin Chris scored a touchdown right up the middle, put us behind 7-0. But it wasn't until Aristotle took the fumble back 90 plus yards that really kind of leveled the playing field on the scoreboard. And then we scored 3 times in a row.
It leveled the score, and then really we kind of took off from there. It was kind of like it calmed everybody's nerves, and here we were going. And so that was a huge play. Aristotle Kirkland, that was a great play from him and from all the defense. The defense was a great unit as well that year. Sure.
Yeah, they scored the first touchdown, and then they didn't score again until late, I think in the fourth quarter. But anyway, it was just as I've joked on here many times, in my mind's eye, there were 70, 80, 90,000 people in Legion Field that day. Yeah. The entire city was there that day. Yeah. The reality is it was like probably 20, 22,000, but to us, it seemed like the whole world.
Yeah. How many fans does Rip Hughes or did Rip Hughes hold?
I think maybe close to 10.
Okay, so it almost doubled in size when we played in Legion Field, or a little more than double what we were used to.
The sheer number of fans in the stands, I would say yes. Coach Hicks may know the size of Rip Hughes, but I think it's about 10. Oh, one thing I was going to bring up, us going up to Legion Field on that Tuesday to practice was kind of like, you remember the movie Hoosiers that came out many years later? Well, you remember when Coach Dale took them to the big gym where they were going to play the state game and they measured the goals? Hey, it's the same 10 feet as it is at home. I think that was the same concept and thought that coaches had, and it worked out so well. Cindy Merrill says to tell you hello. She just joined us.
Great. Good to see you, or good to hear from you, Cindy. Yeah, I think that's what Tuesday did. It really did let us see, what? It's a football field. It's no different other than it's playing on carpet, or that's what they called it back then, AstroTurf. And so there was some difference there, the footing and stuff. But other than that, I think it was a great move. I mean, I'm sure that Huffman had already played on Legion because they're in Birmingham or right outside of Birmingham. But I think for us, I think it really did help. It made the week long, and it was a long trip that day. But I really think that helped out me mentally in preparing for that game.
Yeah, I think that about half of Huffman's games were played on turf, not just Legion Field, but there was another stadium that was used for the high school, city high school teams that was also a turf. And I can't think of the name of it right now. Jonelle Walsingham Kirkland joined us. Coach Cleveland joined us. So thank you, guys.
Okay, Coach Cleveland, I've been talking about you a lot, but I love you.
Right. It's all good. It's all good. But you call it carpet, you call it turf, but frankly, it was just glorified parking lot is all it really was. It was awful.
It was hard, man. It was hard, dude. It was, I really did not like playing on that game, or on that field. But obviously I would rather have been there than sitting at home. So great.
Coach Cleveland, thank you. I knew you'd know. It's Lawson Field. That's the other smaller stadium, but it's turf. And it's only a few miles from here. I don't believe they use it any longer, but back in the day, that was where the other Birmingham schools could play, and it was turf as well. Well, Dewey, let's go off the field.
Okay.
Now, we've just won the state championship. You're in the middle of your junior year. You couldn't imagine, for folks who weren't there, the school spirit and the way the city of Dothan treated us. I could not imagine it being any better. We were treated so well, but everybody got to share in the celebration. And I remember the state championship presentation, a pep rally where Coach Parrish and Dr. Smith got together. And, anytime Dr. Smith said his famous poems, the whole gym just shook with excitement. I know you remember those days.
Yeah. I've told my girls about Dr. Smith several times, and his little poems that he would do, and always end with the same end. And so, yeah, I enjoyed that. I remember, they wouldn't let anybody give us the state championship ring, so we had to go out and work for them. So I actually got one of the working jobs. I had to go to this yard, and I don't remember who it is, but they had never raked their yard, and they must have had 100 pine trees. And so I had to make about 15 trips with my pickup truck loaded down with pine straw to get rid of it, But it was like, you know what? I've already done all the work for the championship. Gladly, I'll go rake a yard and make that extra money. But you're right. I remember when we actually left to go to the game, the convoy of people that went with us. Seems like we had state troopers or police that were with us, going up. So it was exciting. It was and I do think it was a lot of the whole city, or at least the Northview half of the city, was behind us. And so it was great. I really enjoyed that opportunity.
And I remember getting back to the stadium after the game, not stadium, but back to the school.
School. Yep.
And there being such an enormous crowd, the local news was there, and it seems like we were there forever. But, it's just one of those memories that just stay etched in your mind and in your memory from high school that no one can ever take it away from you.
Yeah, that was wonderful times. That was fun. I remember the night before staying in the motel out close to the airport.
Oh yeah.
And go to sleep. Nobody. I mean, we couldn't in our room. We were locked down or whatever. But it was like just never had any kind of nerves like that. But just, I don't know if it was just anxious, just ready to do it and hard to sleep. And so yeah, it was a great experience.
Because mentally and physically we were prepared, and that's a tribute to the coaches and the program from that whole year. But I do need to talk to Bubba about this, because I think it may have been his decision about where to stay. That hotel, that Holiday Inn near the airport, is not a good place to stay. I've been by there many, many times, but it was convenient to get on and off the highway. But I'll get Bubba on here, and he'll have to answer that question.
All night long, the airplanes were taking off, and a lot of the guys had never been around that many airplanes. I was one of them, and all of a sudden it's like, every 45 minutes you've got another plane taking right off. And yeah, that was definitely not the best accommodations, but we got through it. So,
well, Dewey, what are some of your memories about maybe some favorite teachers or classes, or just events, things that you participated in school? Granted, we're keeping this PG-13, and your daughters are going to watch this. So, what are some memories that you can recall from just being in school at Northview?
Yeah, I really, when Coach Ragsdale came on staff, even though he was defense, and I understand now how different the offense and the defense is, but Coach Ragsdale and Coach Griffin and Coach Hicks and all these defensive coaches, Coach Johnson, I didn't as a lineman, offensive lineman, didn't interact with them much, but except for Coach Hicks and Coach Ragsdale. And but I really appreciated Coach Ragsdale's leadership, and he was doing FCA at the time, or trying to help do that, and so that was important. I enjoyed that. Classes, man, I don't know if I enjoyed too many classes, but I got into distributive education in senior year, so I enjoyed getting to get off campus and go work. I I think it was called Sports World at one of the malls there. Charles Heath, I think, was my boss or the owner. And so that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed, who was the history, Miss Spivey. Miss Spivey, I enjoyed hearing her teach and talk. I didn't learn a lot because I don't learn that well about history, but I remember Miss Spivey a lot. And then obviously Miss Hicks in science. And then I had Jackie Cotton as a homeroom teacher. I never actually had her in class. I Miss C, you know what? God bless you, Miss C. I was an office aide for, it seemed like, a few times. And then of course I was in Coach Hicks's office a couple of times, and not for enjoyable time.
The same reason.
Not for the same reason. So yeah, you know, the lunchroom ladies going to lunch, and but that's always a food thing for the linemen. So that was fun. And Miss Cleveland, you know, I had Coach Cleveland's wife for, I think it was 9th grade English, and just the difference between both of them. You know, I'd sit in her class during the day, and then after school be down there with Coach Cleveland. And
double dose. You got a double dose.
Oh, double dose. And then you definitely couldn't talk about English class when you were out at football practice, because he knew who the students were. So yeah, just, you know, I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed it. It was me and Tommy Dixon ran around a lot together, and probably ran around together too often. But I'd love to get in touch with him somehow. I've tried to look for him several times and hadn't been able to. But Mark Smith and I, we used to go water skiing out on the river there between Georgia and Alabama. I don't remember the name of that river there, but we'd go down there and go water skiing, and with his dad a lot.
Guys, help us out here. And if anybody's connected with Mark Smith or Tommy Dixon, I don't know if they're on Facebook, but if y'all know how to get in touch with them, let one of us know so we can both get in touch with them.
I talked with Mark Smith, I don't know, it seems like 4 or 5 years ago. I think he was in Headland or something like that. And we took up for a couple of chats or whatever, but yeah, just fun times with the guys, and going out, and we did a lot of hunting, or at least a lot of shooting, and you know, dove hunting and squirrel hunting, and yeah, it was just good fun, you know.
It's all good fun. And I know that after you graduated from Northview, you went to Tuscaloosa for undergrad.
Yep.
And while you were in undergrad, were there lots of Northview or Dothan kids close to our ages who you ran around with or maybe saw in school?
Yeah, you know, in my fraternity, because I was in a fraternity, that's, at least as a freshman, that's about all you get to know is those people in there. And so, yeah, you had Sean Black, you had Sean Gilroy, Mike Gilroy. They were all from Dothan High, and they were up there. Then Trey Hawkins and Michael Hawkins, they were band guys, but they were in our class. Trey was in my class, and no, Michael was in my class. Trey was older. He's probably a year older than you or something.
I think he was a year older than me.
And so, yeah, we ran around some, saw each other up there. And like I said already, you know, Joe Green and from Huffman. And so, yeah, in Alabama, there was, you know, hey, we're all, at that point, we were all Crimson Tide at that point. It wasn't Cougars and Tigers and everybody else anymore. So,
but you had the ring on your finger, and they
had the ring, and I still have my ring. It's in a box in the Philippines. I started to bring it home because we had talked about we were going to do this show, but yeah, I have it. And the other day, my wife said, "Do you still have that ring?" And I said, "Absolutely, I still have the ring."
That's awesome. Well, Dewey, I want to come back to what we were talking about at the beginning, and we're getting close to the end of our conversation. When the pandemic hit, the type of work, the missionary work that you and your family do, that had to change. That had to affect not just what you do and the way that you're able to carry out your ministry, but all of the children and families who you and your family interact with. And I know, at least a little bit of our conversation, the way the Philippines have treated the government in the Philippines has treated the pandemic is probably different than the way we've been treating it here. So share with us a little bit as we get closer toward the end, how you've been able to continue out your work despite having to deal with the precautions and what the government is allowing you to do or not do, and how you're still able to reach those people.
Well, one of the big things that's different in the Philippines is that there is no welfare system in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. So where in this country, the government steps in and helps out with a lot of the basic needs of life, the government there they don't have the money and they don't have the infrastructure to do that. Mm-hmm. So when something happens like the pandemic, where they basically on March 12th, they came out and said, starting March 15th, you will be, they called it enhanced community quarantine. You're going to be locked down. Nobody can leave. Kids could not leave their houses or anything else. Only one adult per house could leave, and that was only to go to the grocery store on 2 days a week. And you were given the 2 days a week you could go. And so the majority, not the majority, all of the people that we minister to in that community are hand to mouth. If they don't work, they don't eat. That's the bottom line. And it's not like they have a savings. None of them have a bank account. So all of a sudden, you're told 3 days from now, you're not going to go back to work for at least a month. Well, that month became 12 weeks.
Wow.
And so what we realized was there's a lot of families that are going to need something to eat. So how can we go about helping provide that? And the ministry I'm with, Kids International Ministries, did a great job. They started doing, it's a highly nutritious meal. It's called lugaw. The closest we would have would be like a rice soup, but it's got soybean and it's got some other additives that make it nutritional. And we got to a point where we were serving 30,000 meals a day during the pandemic. And then beyond that, you know, I had some local pastors that I was trying to take care of in their churches, because it's just like here, they've stopped all religious gatherings, or I think now they're starting to open up, but they're still locked down in the Philippines even now, where they couldn't meet. And so we went out and we started trying to buy goods and vegetables and rice to help the people, just literally the basic necessity of food, because a lot of these people in our circle of ministry, they just, if somebody didn't bring them something to eat, they weren't going to eat that day. And so it really became, in the last 12 weeks, a focus on providing the basic needs of medicine and food. And we did that during these 12 weeks. And obviously we did it with a spiritual content and tried to deflect the appreciation from us and on the one who had provided it. And so, yeah, it was definitely a different ministry for us over the 12 weeks. And when we go back, it's going to be beginning to lighten up, we hope, but it'll probably still take a few months before we find a new norm. And I know that's the words they're throwing around now, but it'll be interesting to see how it works.
Well, I certainly, on behalf of everybody who's been watching and is learning, I certainly applaud the efforts that you and your family continue to do for so many. And we had some more folks to drop in. Let's see, Marion Whitehurst, Alana Andrews Gray. Lonnie Mathis says that his fiance is in the Philippines. So you guys may have something to chat about when we get finished.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Dewey, I don't want to end this conversation, but at some point we got to wrap it up. I'm having such a good time talking with you. It's so good to see you and hear you and see that you're doing so well and doing so much for so many.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad we reconnected and then had a chance to get on here and just talk about some memory lane and everything. And I appreciate you heading up this and putting things together and reconnecting people and then having these little conversations. And it's been fun. I appreciate anybody that wants to kind of reach out and try to reminisce a little bit and talk about what's going on. A few of the names you've called out, I've been in conversations with over the last couple of years, and especially when people hear I'm in the Philippines and things, it's like, what are you doing there? You know, and I'm definitely in a profession that probably a lot of people from my high school days are kind of going, what? You know, so but you know what, I thank God for what he does and what he's done in my life, and that he's just given me a platform to be able to share and help other people. And so, yeah, it's been nice, and we're happy where we're at and feel like God's got us where he wants us. And as long as we have an opportunity to help some people, we'll help people. So,
that's what it's all about right there. Giving back, paying it forward. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah.
Guys, I can't promise you that tomorrow night's conversation is going to be the same as it is tonight. Most of the stories tomorrow night may be a little bit embellished. I'm not saying they will be, but they might be. But please join me with Chris Lee tomorrow night, number 63. We just had number 75, two of my protectors, and I'm always grateful for that and those memories. So guys, y'all have a safe evening. As I say, each time we're going to get through the pandemic. You just got to use common sense. You got to be smart about things. You got to do the right things for you and your family, as I know you all have been doing. Y'all have a good evening, and we'll catch you tomorrow night.
Okay, thank y'all. Thanks, Bernard.